All right, I know I'm gonna make myself feel old and look old when I admit this, but I have now owned my E36 for 18 years. I got this car when I was 17 years old, a sophomore in high school, and that means I have now owned it for longer than I have not. It has been a part of my life for longer than pretty much anything else in a material sense. It is immeasurably important to me. And to put it simply, you couldn't buy it from me at any price. I'm unwilling to sell it. I have long said I don't believe in the idea of forever cars, but if there is such a thing, that's it for me. But no matter how much money I seem to spend on it, no matter what I do to it, no matter how much other people seem to compliment it or think it's a special E36 as a part of E36 history, if you will, I hate it. I cannot find a way to make myself happy with this car. And when I say I hate it, I mean that I hate it. I don't want to drive it. I don't want to take it anywhere. I don't want to take it to events. I don't want people to see it. All of my friends give me a hard time about not doing anything with it, that I let it sit, that I let it collect dust. But I just can't help it. I want nothing to do with it at times. And it's such a weird place to be in because, as said, I still love it and I could never get rid of it. And so I figured I'll make an episode about it. And since I'm doing something different, we'll try a new format. We'll set up some lights. We'll have fun with it. But the point is, I figured maybe some of you guys out there are in the same boat. And truth be told, I know that's not a maybe. I can see some of you guys have your cars on jack stands in the garage, and you can't find the motivation to pick up the tools and work on it, or you can't find a sense of happiness even once you have it on the road. I'm there, I'm with you. Sometimes it eats me alive. How do you get to the end of a project? I have people ask me all the time, and I've reached the finish line on more cars than I can reasonably count. But somehow this one eludes me. After 18 years, and to be honest with you, more money than anybody should ever put into a 93 base model 3 Series, but we're still not there yet. So let's talk shop and figure out how I'm gonna get happy with my car, and maybe one of you will too. Now let's get one thing out of the way before we start. I don't have anything crazy to show you in this episode. We're not working on anything, we're talking shop. And more importantly than that, I know that to a lot of ears, this is just gonna be me complaining. And I'm aware of that. And honestly, I'm allowed to do that, everybody is. I'm gonna complain about my car for a while. That's what we're here to do, heads up. So if you're not here for that, doors that way. But I'm complaining because I think somebody will gain something from this. Because we are all car guys, and I know what it feels like to just hate your car. That's what this is about. I hate my car. I cannot under any circumstance find a way to make myself happy with it. And I've tried pretty much everything. We gotta go all the way back to the beginning of this car's story for it to really have any impact, because the crux of this whole thing is 15 years ago, I turned down a magazine cover because I told them I wanted to wait until my car was perfect before we put it on there. And they said, sure, open invitation, let us know when it's ready. And here we are literally 15 years later, and I am no closer to having that done, despite spending many times over the value of this car in parts and paint and wheels and engine swaps and interiors and you name it. It is by every measure a complete build, and I still don't know what to do to make it what I want it to be. It's a weird place to be in. And I don't necessarily know the answer to that. We're not heading towards a finish line in this episode. Instead, we're just, I don't know, fiddle farting around about it, I guess. The thing is, when I bought this car, it was my second BMW. I only got an E36, which was expensive at the time because somebody totaled my first BMW, an 87 E30, the first day I drove it to school. Somebody rear-ended it right after I got it going, totaled it, and the insurance check bought a 93 325 IS from the first owner. It was an elderly woman who had bought it to drive back and forth to visit her son on an Air Force base, something like that. It had 100,000 miles on it, granite silver metallic, factory color, black interior. It was a cool car. And I still have photos from when I bought the thing. The very first photos I ever took that launched a career for me in automotive photography for over a decade. It's how I made a living for a long time, and everybody that knows StanceWorks from before YouTube, which I'm new to, will know that, because while I'm new to this whole thing, I'm not new to cars as a whole. This car put me on the map back in the day, because not long after I bought it, I decided to swap an S54 into it. That's an E46 M3 inline 6, and the S54 is as close to new as we're gonna get without rebuilding it. I bought it with 19,000 miles on it because when I started this swap, you could still buy a brand new E46 M3. That's how long ago we're talking. But at the time, that was an engine swap that more or less nobody had done. There were a couple of cars, one of them running Motec from a guy up in Pennsylvania, and another guy, Rob Levinson, that runs UUC Motorsports, was working on a swap of his own using all Z3M hardware. But I wanted to go about it with E46 M3 components, bottom to top, and my friend Eric Rumbaugh and the guys at Fluid Motor Union helped me undertake that, and it took 2.5, almost 3 years for me to get that done because one, I worked at a dry cleaners and had that as my sole source of income. To be fair, no other overhead. I lived at home at the time. And also, we didn't really know what we were doing. We had an idea, but we were just flying by the seat of our pants. And at that time, commenters on the forums told us there's no way we're gonna get this engine swap done. Nobody had done it yet, nobody had made it work because of things like EWS3 and all the complicated wiring, things that are needed to make this car work. It took some time, we got there, and what makes this car kind of special, even in retrospect, is that any BMW swap guys are gonna be somewhat surprised to hear that it runs an E46 M3 cluster, it runs an E46 M3 steering column, it has EWS3, it has every E46 component crammed into it, and if you plug it up to a GT1 head, it will think that it's an E46 M3. It's basically an E46 with an E36 body wrapped around it. It's kind of cool. Nobody really does it that way because these days that's the long way around the barn. It's the hard way to accomplish it, and it costs a bunch to do. But prior, there wasn't another alternative if you didn't want to use Z3M parts. So that made the car interesting and appealing to a lot of people, and as I documented that progress, people started to kind of follow along, find it interesting. They started following StanceWorks. They followed what I was up to. And then came that offer for a magazine cover, and I felt like, hey, I've made it, and maybe I can make something more out of this. It was kind of the beginning of the end, if you will, or at least a new beginning of something. And I turned it down. I said, nah, I've got to make this car perfect. And if I show you photos of it at the time, plenty of people will say, that's as close to perfect as it gets, because it was already S54 swapped, and it had ITBs with open velocity stacks. It had AC Schnitzer wheels. It had our own StanceWorks coilovers on it at the time. I mean, it was a pretty spectacular car, but I wanted it to be perfect. Now, we need to dissect what perfect means because I don't really think that I am a perfectionist. Plenty of commenters will say that I am. I try to do the best I can in every regard, but I've got plenty of cars and plenty of projects that are far from perfect. None of the parts add up to 100, and that's completely okay with me, but for some reason, this car, it has to. I don't know why, but it needs to add up to 100 for me. It needs to be perfect. I think part of that stems from, for so long, almost 2 whole decades at this point, people have seen it as this kind of perfect exemplary E36. And yeah, lots of you young E36 guys aren't gonna be familiar with this car, but there's a chance you've probably seen this photo. That's this car. That's how old this car is. It's the E36 photo. We go way back. It's got history. I think everybody for so long seeing this car as one of the E36s, or an OG car, if you will, it makes it feel like it has to live up to some sort of expectation that I didn't even set. I didn't get to tell people, hey, this isn't perfect. It's, you know, it just created an identity of its own, and here I am chasing this semblance of perfection because it has to now. I can't escape that need for it to be something that is admittedly really hard and really expensive to achieve. So if we look at the history of this car and how it's gotten to where it is today, I've been chasing that. Once I moved out to California, I was daily driving it, and then at some point, I rear-ended a car, I smashed the front end up, and it sat for years because that broke my heart. It had never been in an accident, it had all original paint, it was a nice car by pretty much every normal standard other than perfection. But eventually I realized, well, I'm not gonna let the car go, and this is fixable, I can fix it, let's go for it. And so I started stockpiling all these parts. Eventually I had my friend Colin at Axis Paintworks in Phoenix, Arizona, take on the project of painting this car for me. We did a full glass out respray in the factory color. Every detail, I wanted it to be better than factory paint because it's gotta be perfect. While we were at it, we got rid of the sunroof, we converted it to a slick top coupe. I mean, all the little details where it was like, if I'm gonna make this my dream E36, let's take it all the way. And he did a beautiful job. The car came back from paint looking absolutely incredible. Everybody who's seen the paint on this car agrees it is an incredible job. So turn to him if you need something like that. But after I got it home, it sat because, yeah, paint's expensive, and I didn't even think about the fact that if it has brand new paint, well, now it needs brand new rubber, and it needs all new seals, and it needs new trim, and it needs new moldings. Everything has to be as good as the paint, or the paint's not gonna look right. And so I threw it all on my credit card, to be honest with you. It was a terrible decision. I threw that thing into debt trying to get this car to a point where I wanted it to be, and I bought everything new. Every single part that can attach to the outside of this car, I replaced. Brand new door moldings, new gaskets, new door rubber, new pieces of trim around the glass. Everything had to be new, had to be perfect. It's, again, striving for this sense of perfection. And then it was all of a sudden, well, the underpinnings need to match. And yeah, it has an S54 in it. The swap is good, but all of the details were still original. Still original subframe, still original control arms, bushings, everything. Yeah, it had coilovers, but that's about it. So I started stockpiling those parts. And you guys watched a lot of what went into that, including realizing the floor was cracked under the subframe and needing to repair that. And from that point, all of it's documented here on the channel. You can see every bit of it. We've got episodes. Are they the best? No, we're going way back, almost 2-3 years ago on YouTube now, but that's where we're at. And you've seen the car reach a point of completion, plus or minus some interior work, and it's close. I've even titled one episode, "It Finally Looks the Way That I Want It To," and yeah, that's true, but something somewhere still falls short. I've taken it to a handful of events. The people that know about it tend to fawn over it. I get tagged in photos of people saying, "Holy crap, I finally got to see this car in person after all these years," and that's flattering, it's cool, but somehow it just feels awful because that car doesn't meet my own expectations, and it doesn't seem like it could possibly meet anybody else's expectations at the same time. Now, forgive me, I know to a lot of people that's gonna sound ridiculous that I'm complaining about something, that a really nice car isn't good enough, that I'm not grateful for it, or what have you. Forgive me, that's not my MO here. The point is that no matter what I seem to do to it, I can't reach the finish line. We put an interior in the car and it turned out nice. It's by every measure what most car guys would want out of it. The guy did a great job, but it still just falls short somehow. I don't even know why. Something about it isn't there. It's not done. I can't be happy with it. The same thing goes for the rest of the car. Yeah, the paint is perfect, but if I turn around and look at it, I'm gonna start noticing panel gaps. And now that I think about it, I'm worried you guys are staring at the messed up panel gap between the bumper and the nose panel, nose cone, what have you. It's not perfect, and I hate it. It's just not it. All right, let's stop complaining about the car before somebody insists I should have titled this episode, "Guy Complains About Car That Isn't Perfect," because that's pretty accurate. What's the point of this? What am I trying to get at? Aside from not necessarily knowing, I think it's important to talk about how to get to the finish line of a project, because that's probably the most common question I'm asked on any podcast or interview or anything like that. How do you see a project through to the finish line, and how do you stay motivated? And there's a few parts to that answer. And let's be clear, it's tough love. First of all, no one's ever gonna finish your car for you. Simple as that. Yeah, you can pay somebody, that's different. When it comes to your motivation, no one's gonna do it for you. Yeah, I know sometimes money gets in the way, we've all been there. Ignore that part of it. When it comes to the motivation of finishing your project, if you aren't working on it, if you're inside sitting on the couch, or if you're out doing something else, if you're wasting your time on other hobbies, that's fine, to be clear, there's nothing wrong with that. But it means you don't want it bad enough. If you want it bad enough, you'll be out in the shop and you'll be working on it. How do you do that? How do you retain that motivation? And the answer is sometimes I do not have it. I have to force myself to come out into this shop and pick up the tools, whether that's pick up the welder, to start turning wrenches, to start cutting metal, you name it. It is absolutely awful to do sometimes. It sucks. I don't want to do it. You think I'd rather be out here sometimes in the cold shop grinding metal, throwing sparks in my face instead of relaxing inside, kicking back, having a beer? No. Sometimes, yeah, but no, not always. It sucks, but if you want to get to the finish line, you have to force yourself to do it. So I force my ass to walk out here and pick up the tools and make it happen. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes hours, sometimes minutes, but eventually, every time, without fail, I find that the motivation comes back. I fall into a groove, I get excited, and I realize I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing. Whatever seemed more appealing moments, hours, or days before is irrelevant. This is what I'm passionate about, and I think you have to have some version of that. You don't have to be as into it as I am, and I'm not the most into it. I know plenty of people that are way more aggressive about how much time they spend in the shop than I am, but you have to want it if you're gonna get it to the finish line. Given that I know the answers to all of those, given that I have that set of tools at my disposal to know how to get to a finish line, and clearly I've done it before, why am I not there with my own car after 18 years? How come I can't find some sense of accomplishment or happiness with this car? For one, I think if I admit to myself, I have set a goal that I'm not capable of achieving. Will the car ever be nice enough? Probably not, no. And if it was, I surely would not drive it. So why is that the milestone that I want? Second is I realize that I'm focusing more on some idealistic outcome than actually enjoying the vehicle. Whether that enjoyment is supposed to be driving it or looking at it, whether it's taking it to the track, taking it to a show, whatever. Even if it's just my own enjoyment of owning it, I'm letting something else dictate what that's supposed to be instead of just actually enjoying it. Because if I take a step back and look at it, yeah, it's a cool E36. It's a really cool E36. I think that it's pretty sweet if you ask me. But is it enough? Why is it not enough? It's something I gotta work on. In all, I think the entirety of this is to say, I have put so much time and so much effort into a car. I have let it sit, I have worked on it, let it sit and worked on it again. I have moved it across the country with me. I have put mile after mile on it. I've road tripped in it. I've wrecked it. I love this car. I absolutely adore this car. It means the world to me. It really does. But I hate it. Point being, it's okay to hate your project car too. It's okay to have no motivation. It's okay to not want to pick up the tools. It's okay to let it sit, to not do something with it, to resent it. Any of the above. All of those are completely normal, reasonable feelings to have towards your project car. And I'm putting all of this out there. I've rambled now for probably 20 minutes because I want everybody else to know I feel that way too. I am a very normal car guy that just does this for a job in some sense, but I feel it too. Trust me when I say I have been in the trenches, so to speak. Sometimes it sucks. It's okay. You're not alone. Nobody is a robot machine that loves to do this 24/7, 365, even if they pretend to on YouTube. I'm right there with you. Plenty of times, even right now, I have absolutely no desire to do anything about everything on this car that bugs me. I don't even know if I will. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I'm gonna ride it out and find out. I'm certainly not gonna sell it. All of that to say, it's okay to lack that motivation, but hopefully now maybe you're a little bit more equipped to know what you have to do to solve them. I guess the bad part about this whole thing is that there's no shortcut. I have the answers. At least I think I have the answers at my disposal, and there's not a dang thing I can do about it to shortcut this thing. You just have to deal with the suck. It's gonna be awful if you want the outcome. You gotta work for it. You have to work to get what you want out of your car, and I guess I'm not willing to put that in right now, or at least the checkbook won't allow me to. Maybe someday. That's enough for this one. Hopefully you know what you have to do. It's hard, it sucks. You gotta push through it. You gotta pick up the tools, you gotta make it happen. You gotta go out into your garage, and whether your car is on jack stands or maybe the tires are flat, maybe it's covered in dust, maybe it's covered in boxes or parts, I don't know. Whatever the case may be, it sucks, but you gotta work on it. And if you don't, your excuses are your own. This episode's been full of them. Hopefully that's worth something to you. This was a different one. Let me know if you like it. Leave a note in the comments. I'll catch you guys in the next one. We're making progress on the Model A, and it's been good. So, and to that end, let me tell you just how hard it's been to work on it, because Trust me when I say I have not. It's been sitting for as long as this thing has for the same reason. No motivation. I've come out here and tried to do it. I've forced myself to pick up the tools. And of course, every time that momentum comes back, once we're moving, something comes up. I've got to leave town, or we've got to get a project done for something else. I've got to put those tools down, pick up a different set. It's real life. It's how it works. Got to deal with it. Anyways, that's enough for this episode. Whether I want to work on it or not, I've got to get the Model A done. I'll catch you guys next week.